Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to those out there who have liked and shared these videos. I hope that the technical information that we're giving you gives you some knowledge and understanding of how these engines work and what it takes to put one of these things together. It's certainly not easy. And also to our subscribers, thank you so much. If you're able, it'd be great if you would subscribe to the channel so that you can keep up to date with what's going on with the car. We would, as I've said, like one day to be monetized, and that's definitely an aim of ours, is to grow the channel as far as we can, because I think we do have something to offer to people out there that can see a grassroots team and what they go through to piece an engine together like this. It's taken me 10 years, no exaggeration. It's taken me 10 years to get this engine together. So I've devoted my life to it, really. And as you can see here, I could definitely not do it without the help of these fantastic guys, two of my crew here. That's Paul Topping in the black t-shirt, and Gary Mutton. I've mentioned Gary before in the yellow shirt, and that's me in the grey beanie there, mostly getting in the way of these guys trying to do the work. But as you can see, we got the engine in last Thursday. We put a basic setup in the clutch and assembled the bell housing and the transmission on the rear of the engine. And from here, we're looking to strengthen the bracketry for the magneto so that doesn't move around too much. And also, we've got a nappy to fit. And once we reach that stage, the car will be ready for a tech inspection. I think this is a really important process. I did tech inspections for a number of years for ANDRA, our governing body here in Australia, and sometimes you're able to point out to people that they missed some safety aspects of the car, and with us, safety's number one. These things can and will bite you real hard. I don't want teeth marks in me. I want to be safe. So I've got grandchildren that I want to see, so I'm not leaving any stone unturned as far as safety goes. We really need to put that at the forefront of our racing, for myself and for the crew as well. Now, we're just waiting on push rods at the moment to get this engine running, to put this oil pressure problem to bed. So we ordered 10 push rods for the exhaust side of the engine. We always buy 2 spares, and I'll bet you anything you like we won't need those 2 spares, but they'll be there anyway if we need them. Now, just a bit of a rundown on the push rods. They're a 716 trend push rod with I think they're 185 wall, so they're quite a heavy push rod. So there's 716 right in the midpoint of its length, and then from that diameter it tapers down to a 3/8 diameter on each end, and then from that diameter it tapers down to a 5/16 ball with a 210 radius. Now these push rods are almost a triangle, if you like, and if you know anything about triangulation, it's a resistance to bending or flexing. So if you can picture that in the engine, when the lobe comes around and wants to smack the lifter up, and the push rod's there in the middle between the rocker arm and the spring and the lobe, the tendency is for the push rod to flex. So anytime you can reduce that flex, you're going to make more power, and the timing events are going to be more accurate. So that's a little bit about our push rods, and we can now move on to letting you have a look at some of the spares we've got in the cupboard, and give you a bit more of a in-depth look at what some of the features of those items are. First item in the spares collection is the conrods, and as I've mentioned before, these are a KB forging, and what that means is the rod bolt to rod bolt width of the rod is quite a bit wider than a standard small block rod, and we can run these rods due to the fact that we have a block that's got wider pan rails and a raised camshaft location. So by having that extra support around the bearing, if you can picture this thing revving at 10,500 RPM and the piston's at top dead center and it gets yanked down by the crank, then that bearing housing wants to distort. So look, we're confident that these things are up to task and we're going to protect the rod bearings a lot better. Righto, let's look at the pistons now. And here you can see one of our spares that we purchased. It's a CP forging. It's in the SB2 layout, and you can see how far the top ring sits down from the top of the piston. That's to protect the ring from the immense heat that these engines make, and not something you'd do with an NA engine, but in our world, that's what's needed and that's what's required. So with that dome that we've got on that piston and the combination of head gasket and piston to deck clearance that we're currently running, that gives us about 11.6 to 1. But potentially by going to a longer rod, 20 thou longer rod perhaps, and a 20 thou thinner head gasket, we can achieve 13 to 1. But we needed to start at a softer point so that we can even up our exhaust, as I've mentioned before. And also, if you combine 13 to 1 with 60 pounds of boost, that tuning window just narrows right up. And if you make an error with the tuning side of it, you'll burn this stuff up in 2 seconds. So for us, we wanted to start off quite soft and learn more about the engine and what it wants. And then from that point on, once we've done some runs, then we can start stepping on it and, seeing if we can burn some up after that. Let's look at the pins now. And these things are a very, very heavy wall pin, also made out of an exotic material. And the big part of this stuff hanging in there is how well supported they are. And if you look at the little end of the rod, it just fits between the piston pin bosses, and that maximises the amount of support. Next up's the exhaust valves. And as you'll see, there's a very large 25-degree back angle or tulip on the back of the valve. And this is to help direct the air, as the airspeed in an exhaust port is up to 3 times faster than an inlet port. So if that tulip wasn't there, there'd be a lot of turbulence or eddying in behind that valve, and we don't want that. We want laminar flow as quickly as we can get the exhaust out, the better. And this is really required for most high RPM engines. Here's a look at the 2.250 inch inlet valves. Both the valves have a radial groove, and as we look down towards the head of the valve, you can see the margin of the valve, and the end of the margin's quite sharp, and this is there for a reason. If that was a radius, the fuel would actually run down around the valve and end up on the head of the valve in the chamber, and we don't want that. We want to burn that fuel. So by having that sharp edge, the fuel flicks off and ends up back in the airstream. So that's the reason for the sharper edge on the inlet valve and not the exhaust. I'd like to give some specs on our 4.4 bore spacing small block Chev engine, starting with the bore size at 4.128 inches, the strokes at 3.70 inches, and that combined gives us 396 cubic inches. Sitting on top of that manifold's a PSI D series blower, which we spin at 68% over. Our rules allow us to run it at 72, so we got 4% up our sleeve. As it is in its current form, I would estimate the engine would make around the 2,500 horsepower range, and potentially with the extra comp and some more overdrive, we'd be in the low 3,000s, I'd say. This combined with the weight of the car with me in it at around 1,800 pounds, this should push the car to mid-5s. So we've got a real good chance of knocking that record on the head. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Time's run out. I've got to get back to work. I hope to see you guys on the next one, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.